So, the DJI Osmo Mobile 5 has arrived. Oh, and the OM4 SE. Not that we needed them, but there you go. We got them. So what's different between the OM5 and the OM4 and the OM4 SE? A selfie stick. That's it? No, I'm kidding. There's a bit more, so to find out all the deets, don't go away. Hey guys, Mike here and welcome back to the channel. And just to get early, for all of you people with ever declining attention spans and even worse patience, there are timestamps to all sections in the description below. So today DJI announced the arrival of two new gimbals, the Osmo Mobile 5 gimbal or OM5 and the OM4 SE. And these come just a year after the last model, the OM4. To be fair, the OM4 SE was announced here in New Zealand a week before the official launch, and I've covered the differences between that gimbal and the original OM4. Link to that video here and in the description below. The DJI OM4 has been the best-selling smartphone gimbal over the last 12 months and introduced a number of category-leading innovations over the Osmo Mobile 3, and in so doing, set the DJI gimbal line even further ahead of the competition. Now, one of the biggest complaints that any smartphone gimbal user has had is that it's sometimes tricky and slow to get the phone mounted in the gimbal. So the key innovation introduced in the OM4 was a magnetic design that allowed you to attach and release your smartphone to the gimbal in seconds. But as for the OM5, the biggest change in this new model versus the OM4 is the addition of an integrated selfie stick into the main handle body of the gimbal. The OM5 folds down to around 17 centimeters or 6.7 inches, but can be extended when you need to get closer to your subject or further away from yourself. It doesn't seem to extend quite as much as a traditional selfie stick, but it should be enough to give you a little extra flexibility with your shots, and for ultimate convenience, the gimbal's controls remain down by your hand. However, what this does mean is that the telescoping mechanism built into the OM5 will definitely have an impact on battery life. And they've replaced the 2450 milliamp hour battery that's in the OM4 with a 1000 milliamp hour battery in the OM5. So this means the battery life will be around 6 hours and 20 minutes compared to 15 hours for the Osmo Mobile 4. Now this reduction shouldn't be a showstopper for most people because over 6 hours of battery life is still more than enough in my opinion, and given it is a smaller battery, the charge time will be pretty quick as well at around an hour and a half. Thankfully, the magnetic mounting system from the OM4 has continued, which should mean it's as easy as ever to quickly attach and detach your phone from the gimbal. As with the OM4, the gimbal is controlled with the DJI Mimo App, which is available for both iOS or Android devices, and you can take advantage of a whole host of creative modes to add more pizzazz to your shots, including story mode, clone me pano, hyperlapse, motion lapse, and my favorite, dynamic zoom, where the camera replicates a dolly zoom effect that is actually only seen in the movies. So there's plenty of modes that'll help you create more cinematic and professional looking footage. And also don't forget the active track subject tracking feature also ensures that you or your subject are in the frame, removing the need for manually controlling the gimbal. Now alongside the OM5, DJI also announced the release of the OM4 SE. In fact, this additional model was announced a week earlier here in New Zealand, so we've had a little bit of time to study it. The OM4 SE is almost identical to the OM4 with a couple of small differences. First of all, the OM4 SE doesn't include a magnetic ring holder, although it can still be purchased separately and works perfectly with the SE model. And secondly, the SE's magnetic phone clamp is a slightly different design from the OM4. The spec sheets show that the magnetic clamp on the SE model is heavier at 34 grams versus the OM4 model at 32.6 grams. It's a very small difference, but it looks like they may have changed the design slightly to make it a little bit more robust, or maybe change the size slightly to accommodate larger phones. Everything else about the specs between the OM4 and the OM4 SE is exactly the same, and so the OM4 SE is effectively replacing the OM4. It's also cheaper, with the OM4 SE model selling here in New Zealand for 179 New Zealand dollars, which is $80 or around 30% cheaper than the OM4. So that means if and when you can get the OM4 SE in the States, you're probably looking at around 99 US dollars, which is an insane price because you basically get the OM4 without the magnetic ring holder. But don't forget, you can still buy it separately if you want. It just doesn't come in the box like it did with the OM4. So that means the OM4 is now effectively redundant. And here in New Zealand, you can now only buy it from retailers that have old stock left. It's not even listed on the main DJI distributor's website here in New Zealand. So, should you get the OM5, the OM4 while you still can, or the OM4 SE? Well, in my opinion, it's only a call between the OM5 and the OM4 SE, as the OM4 is effectively gone. The OM4SE is actually an improvement over the OM4 due to the change in the clamp design, and you can still buy the magnetic ring holder separately if you want it. So, the OM4SE or the OM5?
In the end, there can be only one.
Yes, this is a personal choice. However, rather than be a fence sitter, I'm going to recommend the OM4SE, with the key difference of any note between the two gimbals being the extendable selfie stick on the OM5. Now, I find it hard to believe that they built it in as a response to a lot of demand or requests for it. I think it's more likely that their engineers, since they're paid to keep innovating and improving, came up with the idea because they had spare capacity in the battery and that they might as well reduce that and add some additional functionality into the device. Not that I think it's a bad idea, not at all. I actually think it's a great idea, and one way to actually improve a product that, to be fair, is actually pretty hard to improve since it's already super good. I just personally think it's not that compelling a reason to make many people want to buy it. Having said that, it does open up the possibility of getting some more creative shots with the extra reach the selfie stick gives you. But for you and me and Joe Blogs, who will mostly run after our kids and dogs filming them, meh. Now, my recommendation doesn't help those of you who can't get your hands on the OM4SE anytime soon. If history is anything to go by, you probably don't have to wait long before you'll be able to buy it. The DJI Mini 2 SE that was initially released in a small number of countries, including New Zealand, was soon made available in the US and other countries. I suspect that they only launched it in a limited number of countries to start with because their mass production lines had not built up enough stock to adequately supply the larger consumer markets, and it's probably the same with the OM4SE. So to me, the OM4SE, given that it's effectively an improved version of the OM4 at 30% cheaper than you could buy the original OM4, is definitely the way to go, if you can get it. But hey, if you want to pay a little bit more extra and have the option of a selfie stick built in when you need it, by all means, fill your boots. Now, as awesome as the Osmo Mobile range is, DJI do have some competition. Recently, I reviewed a gimbal from Hohem that has built-in artificial intelligence hardware, which means you don't have to use a proprietary app like DJI Mimo to operate the gimbal, allowing you to use a different app to control the camera. It's definitely worth checking out as an option. So check that out here, and I'll see you over there. Cheers, guys.